Why do we always grow a fascination for things that should not be? We learn of something wrong and unnatural, yet a part of us will always become intrigued by it. And sure, most of us would never actually dig into such irregularities, but if it was right before us, staring us in the face, well, you couldn't help but at least take a glance, could you not? While our preternatural nature means that little is off limits to us, there are still sins we can commit, with the dreaded act of diablerie being among them. But our power over other beings, and even our sway over other supernatural ones, gives us more things we probably should not do. See, I have yet to bring it up, but quite a lot of other creatures of our similar power are actually quite afraid of us. But this is not because of our physical prowess, far from it. Even some of them mock us for this. And given the state of most modern kindred, they are right to mock them in this aspect. No offense, my war. But why we are feared is because of our sway and domineering control. See, we kindred, inherently, are seductive beings. Even the lowly Nosferatu can offer and tempt, seducing in a different manner entirely, often with knowledge and information, secrets and spies and all that. Some even view us as an easy get-out. We have many ways of getting what we want without violence, and we offer that to them. For a price, of course. Our power and influence, however, is drowning. Our vitae, even if it is but trickles and drops, can completely subject one's mind, and in most cases, take over their own preternatural gifts. Mages will start to lose their magic, and Fae will start to become something else entirely. But the ones that truly fear this aspect of ours, despite the fact they can rip most of us in half, are the lupines. For despite what they, and even some of us, will tell you, it is quite possible for us to completely control and dominate a lupine, and even ghoul, or possibly even embrace them. But for them, this is by far a fate worse than death, for they will lose their connection to their gods and most of their other magical powers, outside of their shape-shifting abilities and the gifts that have altered their bodies already. However, their fear of this is actually quite funny from our perspective, since this is rare to the point of obscurity. The main reason for this, though, is unlike everything else that find the sensation of our feeding and the drinking of our blood amazing, they find our blood disgusting and toxic to the touch. It still acts like the normal blood, mind you, they are simply repulsed by it, yet it sways and affects them the same. However, they can be forgiven in thinking that our blood is a poison to them, for they can actually die from them drinking enough of it. In fact, I would say that the vast majority of the time, this will slowly kill them, and only 1 in 100 times will they ever survive being ghouled or embraced. But you may be asking, if the blood is not toxic, then how does it kill them? Well, this is the part of their nature that they would deny. For once the blood takes hold and their connection to their gods is being lost, that sliver that still remains will lash out and destroy them from within. Most, if not all of them, blind to their own foolish dogmas, will accept and embrace death, for not doing so would be the denying of their afterlife, as all of us kindred do. In fact, this is so ingrained into them that if they have sufficient willpower to try and resist said effect, it would instead be used to, shall I say, allow their own death, slowing down the vitae's control long enough and empowering their own magic so that it would end them. So, from their perspective, our blood basically is a poison, and almost every single one of them would despise that outcome, so they kill themselves. If you truly wish to turn a lupine, you must first break their willpower utterly, so that they do not even attempt resistance. However, the lupines and their worldview and thoughts on this are not what we're here to discuss, now are they? For we are here to talk about what actually happens when a lupine, or any other type of Thera, is ghouled or even, God forbid, embraced, and actually allowed to turn into a kindred. But remember, this is rare, to the point where this conversation is utterly pointless. We are talking about something that is only attempted once every 10 odd years, and only works 1 in every 100 cases, to the point where every single one of them that has survived more than a year can probably be counted on one pair of hands. Well, maybe a little more, perhaps a Zemiti's pairs of hands. You get the idea. Now, I should also note that most, in fact almost all, actually attempt the embrace over ghouling. Ghouling of lupines is borderline unheard of, since the changes to their body are the same, and so the risk of destruction is there in the same degree. Regardless of... well, it's completely the opposite of other preternatural beings. For example, a mage will slowly start to lose their magic over time, but this could take hundreds of years if they are a ghoul, and quite a powerful one at that, making it quite worth it. But a changing beast will feel the negative effect immediately, so you might as well just embrace them and get it all over with. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say. And of course, a large amount of kindred are also destroyed in attempting this, for obvious reasons I should hope. Yet sometimes, and once in a blue moon, a lupine is embraced and has become an abomination. That is what both us and them call our little hymen, for it truly is something that should not exist. Some of the Fera are under the impression that they cannot be turned into abomination. For an example, the Korax and the Makole, with their closer connection to the sun than the moon, are said to burst into flames upon the first sunrise, regardless of their location. But I know for a fact that one Makole survived becoming an abomination. Sobek, the Setite Methuselah, sired by Set himself, so all can become one. I assume each breed has different requirements and scenarios needed to work for them, making it even less likely to succeed. Most of them are also probably yet to be discovered, and probably only possible by the strongest of our kind, hence why it's rare to the point of being unheard of. But regardless of the breed they are, they really do get the worst of everything, and not all of the good parts. So let me go over how. For they get to keep their shape-shifting, as I said before, that is really the only consistent thing they keep. They will lose their lupine regeneration and have to heal like us, since again this is a bodily process that has been changed. Their magical powers, however, are a bit more inconsistent. Most of their gifts they shall keep, and they are probably still able to use their rights. However, any fetish they previously had would no longer work for them, as it would be loyal to their gods, who they now abandon. However, there is a way for them to fix this, and even gain new powers again, but it revolves around them pledging themselves to another of their gods, completely abandoning Gaia entirely. It would either have to be the Wild, Weaver, or Worm. But they often only turn to the Worm, since the others are never going to answer them. It's not impossible for the others to not do so, just highly unlikely in an already near impossible scenario, essentially making it unheard of, and indeed, I know not of one who has successfully done so. I merely know it to be theoretically possible. They could, however, make a fetish again after doing so. It would have to be with one of those more dark spirits like a Bane, instead of the ones loyal to Gaia. However, they do get all of the benefits of being within a kindred clan. They will gain all of the disciplines associated with it. However, I find them much slower at learning this. Not worse, mind you, it just takes them a while to get used to a new type of power entirely. They also struggle to use it alongside their old ones. It's not that they can't use both, mind you, it's more so they have to activate one after the other, rather than the masterful control of both as you might have fantasized about. They are also very bad at controlling their own thirst, often falling into a hunger frenzy and succumbing to bloodlust quite easily, as you could imagine. Believe it or not, a creature that was never human is really bad at retaining their humanity. They also all get hit by this wave of sorrow and sadness, an emotion only lupines can feel, a sort of sense of hopelessness known as the Harano, as it was described to me. It just sounds like a form of Grand Depression to me, and the lupine I told that to did not take that comment lightly, and assured me it was totally different. He just couldn't put how into words. I'll let you be the judge of that. I should also note that their mental state beyond this specific affliction would also deteriorate, with many of them being maddened into their own final death. Although I would just class this as another failure to create one, as it often happens within the early nights. Again, they are things that should not exist and should be expected to not last long. Why not destroy themselves from within mentally as well as physically while you're at it? The last thing I shall note of their nature is the weakening of some of the blood's properties, for their blood struggles to dominate others at all, with many of them completely unable to forge blood bonds, and absolutely none of them can embrace at all. If you ask me, one of their kind who has somehow survived the embrace should probably give up on their old life and their gods altogether. The worm character is hardly something worth following, and you are a vampire now for Cain's sake. You are your own god. Anyway, due to my age and my insatiable lust for wisdom, I have encountered them before, but these encounters were far too scant for my liking. While I don't think they should exist, I sure do wish to know more about them, and you have no idea how much I am willing to give in order to dissect a surviving one, mind, body, and soul. But alas, you would probably have to add another 0 to my age before this could be accomplished, and I already have one too many of those. The first I met was a Malkavian black spiral dancer. The only reason they survived is because they not only already pledged themselves to the worm, but found that these new contradictions within their own maddening nature ended up fueling their powers, making them so much more of a threat that me and 3 other kindred of a similar age were all called in to deal with them. Of course, we didn't actually need that many of us. Only one of us could have destroyed this threat ourselves, but the higher-ups, shall I say, wanted this to be a certainty. When we found them, they were running a small criminal empire dealing mostly with various drugs in Cardiff, for they were Welsh, actually. Believe it or not, the hardest part was getting close for them, for they took control of an offshoot of the Dunserin family, who themselves were an offshoot of the Giovanni, the new kings of Hecata, meaning that the drugged vampired werewolf was running a zombie-led crime gang. It sounds funny until you actually encounter such a thing. The other I met, however, was on a lot better terms, and after our business was done, I'd let them be, although I find the idea of them to be sickening for a very different reason entirely. They were a Shadow Lord who was embraced by a Ventru. They called themselves the Dark Baron and ruled a tiny region in Estonia from a dark castle. Something out of a ridiculous mortal novel, but I have to commend them, for they did help us out in a primarily Sabbat-controlled land. They did not do this out of want to help the Camarilla, nor did they seek to join, and we would probably not have them, but for an ally of convenience, they redeemed their accursed state quite well. But the reason I feel disgust towards them, it's not actually their fault, but that of a rumor that I pray to whatever divine being gazes at the fetid carcass that is the modern era, is not true. Whoever their sire was is unknown, for they devoured them only a few years after their embrace. However, people question who the foolish Ventru was to actually do such a thing, and despite what a lot of us say, us Ventru are quite partial to gossip. After business, of course. But one of the potential candidates was one of my own great-great-grandchild. If this is true, I am outraged. Not at the abomination, but my own distant progeny. For my spawn should be smarter than to do such acts. And for what? Pride? Vanity? So you could flaunt a lupine pet like a Roman in some Colosseum? I would never... What am I saying? Hypocrisy bleeds from my ever-still heart. Did I not too recently tell you of a time I contemplated committing the same sin? And while the difference here is that theirs would have been out of foolish vanity, mine would have been out of blind love. But a sin is still a sin, and some things should not exist. If, however, it is true, and that abomination has my blood flowing through its veins, it's done a very good job with it. and that is why I pulled a couple of strings to make sure that it is left alone. By the Camarilla, at least. They will of course be hated by many, if not most, as with the rest of their kind. You don't get a name like Abominations by many different groups who all hate each other unless you really have something wrong with you. But if you ask me, I find them quite sorrowful and almost somber to some degree. They are the results of almost impossible circumstances to meet, and yet their existence is agony for not just them, but those around them. I can't think of many things that by their own nature are so powerful and yet feel so useless and horrid. I think in all earnesty, I would rather be a mortal than an abomination. Power in and of itself is not a blessing if there is little you can do with it. If anything, power can tighten a cage you were already in. Although in this case it would probably be more of a collar. That's the last I shall speak of the lupines and other changing breeds in whole. You know more than enough, and well, yes, there is always more to know, but it's not really my area of expertise, so I think I'm going to stop there. Well, I've already told you more than some scholarly kindred will ever know, so I have to give myself some credit. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe, it really does mean a lot to me. But, till next with me, fellow traveler. Have a good night.